The CZ75 SP01 Tactical, let's check it out. The CZ75 was introduced in 1975, and it was one of Czech Republic's military firearms, made in 9mm and based really heavily on the Browning high power, but this is double action. It's been used by more militaries than any other sidearm in the world, and from that has been a number of different CZ75 variations. This is the SP01 Tactical. It's an all steel frame, it's double single action, it has more of a shroud to it, and this is made really great for competition, but it is a full-size pistol. One of the big things about the CZ75 is it has internal slide rails. So the slide rails actually fit down into the frame, and it gives it a very smooth shooting experience. While the market has been dominated by polymer frame striker fire pistols, the CZ75 is just as popular today as it ever has been. And then when you go to the SP01, this is one of the smoothest shooting guns. Now, my original review of the SP01 was a number of years ago, and I just decided to get this one back out, take it to the range, and just do an updated review. But the big thing is, I just wanted to take this to the range. And we appreciate CZ for originally sending the SP01 as a T&E, which I purchased. This is a great gun. The CZ75 SP01 Tactical. There's a number of different models with the SP01. There's the basic SP01, which has a frame safety, the Phantom, which has a polymer frame, and this is the Tactical, and this has the decocker. Let's go ahead and check to make sure the gun's unloaded. We're going to drop our 18+1 magazine, check the chamber, and the gun is empty. Now with the decocker, with the hammer in the rear position, as we bring it down, it drops the hammer. If you have a standard frame safety, it's going to allow you to have the hammer in the rear position, and then it'll just be cocked and locked. Actually, that really helps some with the trigger pull. With the decocker, it does interfere a little bit, but not too much for practical use. But if you're a real trigger snob, you're going to definitely want that frame safety. Comes with two 18-round magazines with a little bit of an extended base plate, but with your standard 16-round CZ75 magazines, they fit just right in there as well. So the grip is pretty much the same size. Also, we do have a bevel in the magazine well, and then the taper on the magazines. It allows it to fit really well. Now, this has a really nice finish on it. It's actually a black polycoat finish, and the fit and finish on the CZs are just exceptional. And then here we have the standard CZ75, and this is what the basic model was designed as. This one is the frame mounted safety, so it is cocked and locked, so with the hammer back, you can leave it in that position. It doesn't have the decocker. And again, you can get that with the SP01. But you can notice right up front that the shroud on the frame just extends on past the slide, up to meet the end of the slide. And with the CZ, it does have more of that drop down little section right here, very similar to the Browning high power. And of course, we have one of those as well. And pretty much based on the high power, but the high power is a single action pistol, while the CZ is a double single action pistol. And of course, the CZ75 SP01 is a double single action pistol. And really that just means that when you pull the trigger, you actuate the hammer. And then subsequent shots will bring that slide back, and it will have the hammer in the rear position, and then you have single action. And so it's a really smooth shooting gun, even in double action. But with single action, it's a real short, crisp break. Now, with the decocker, it does affect some of the internals of the trigger, so it's going to make it just a little less appealing than your standard. But again, I mean, it's just a really smooth shooting firearm. One of the things that really aids in that is the grip. The grip is very ergonomic. It used to be one of the most ergonomic grips out on the market, and honestly, it probably still is. It just, the way the grip comes up and you're allowed to get that hand up high, has a very low bore axis. A lot of that has to do with the internal slide fit into the frame. So the slide rails actually go down into the frame and the slide rails come along the frame. And so that keeps this slide very low when you're shooting it in your hand. And so it really helps to mitigate the recoil. Another part of that is the slide rails extend all the way down. So you have contact with the slide all the way through. And so it really does make this a very soft shooting gun. And again, the grip helps as well. So when you're gripping the gun, you're allowed to get a really high ride on the gun and you're not hitting the slide. And sometimes that can interfere with the functioning of the slide if you get too much of a grip on that slide. But with this, you've got a lot of real estate to be able to get that thumb up high. And so those are some of the factors that make this a very soft shooting firearm and why it's so sought after with competitive shooters. Now, it does have serrations on the back and up here toward the front. One of the things I will say about the CZ slide, because it does fit down into the frame, you don't really have a lot to grab hold of. I mean, you have to really just grab the top and be able to pull it. But honestly, if you're used to shooting the CZs, you get used to that pretty quickly. Slide stop is somewhat extended, so it gives you a little bit more to be able to drop that slide. The magazine release as well is a little bit extended, and so it makes it fairly easy to be able to get to those magazines and be able to change them out. And then with this large shroud on the frame, it does allow for your Picatinny rail, and that's one of the things the original CZ75 does not have. And so this gives you 3 slots. It allows you to put lights, lasers, things like that. And especially on a firearm this size, this is really excellent for a home defense firearm because you're not really going to want to carry something like this because it is an all steel frame. This is not an aluminum frame, so it is full weight. And we're going to look at the weight, but it really runs around 3 pounds when it's loaded. So it's a fairly heavy firearm. The trigger guard has some serrations right here at the front. It is a pretty large trigger guard. You have serrations right here on the front strap of the grip and on the back strap. They're actually small little patches, but when you're gripping the gun, they just seem to fit right in your hand. Now, the original grips that came with this were a black rubber grip, and it actually had a little bit of a palm swell. It's very comfortable. But I decided to put the VZ grips on here, and these are G10, and it has just a lot of texturing right here. But to be honest with you, it just makes this gun really look nice. And so with all my CZs, I've taken those rubber grips off and I put on the VZ grips. But the standard grips that come on here are actually pretty good. It does have a lanyard loop at the bottom, and this is considered a firearm for military and police, and so thus you're going to retain that little lanyard loop at the bottom. The sights are True Glow Tritium 3-dot sights, and they're just adequate. They're excellent sights, just that 3-dot pattern, easy to see. And then you have serrations that run up and down the top of the spine here. This just cuts down on glare. Now, the CZ75 design is one of the most copied designs in the world, and one of the reasons is when the Czech Republic designed the CZ75, it was still behind the Iron Curtain, and they didn't want for Western countries to know exactly how this firearm was designed, and so they kept it as an internal patent in the Czech Republic. And some of that was due to pressures from the Soviet Union, and because of that, this was kind of an anomaly with Western countries for a long time. And I remember when these first started coming into the country, I mean, people were going crazy and they've not stopped. I mean, this is really one of those firearms that is just iconic, and it's just such a smooth shooter. And it's definitely unique more than any other firearm out there with that design. But on the other hand, there are a lot of firearms that actually are very much this same CZ design. And probably one of the most popular is the Baby Eagle from IWI. And they make a really excellent CZ75 clone, and it shoots just like the CZ75. And there are a lot of others that have copied it. The barrel is 4.6 inches in length. It is a cold hammer forged barrel, so you're going to get really extended life. And the width is 1.4 inches, so it's fairly thick, and a lot of that has to do with the controls. Because overall, it's a very pointable firearm, just like the CZ 75. But you have that extra weight that's coming out at the front. This was actually inspired by the P01 Compact, which is a smaller version of the CZ 75. It does have somewhat of a shroud here. I do have the Compact PCR, which is more like the standard CZ 75 design. Now, if you'll notice, the hammer is in the fully seated position. But when we bring it back and we hit the decocker, it is in a half cock position. So the double action trigger pull is not quite as long. So we're going to test it. Right here we have some take up, have some resistance, and then we have the break. It's a fairly smooth resistance, but it's a resistance nonetheless. Reset. Fairly long, but not too bad, and it's tactile and audible. When it comes to single action, have some take up right here, a little bit of stacking, and then a break. And it's a nice break, but again, when you put the frame safety on, it's going to give you even a better trigger pull. We'll check the trigger pull weight with our Lyman trigger gauge from Brownells, double action. 9 pounds, 13 ounces. And honestly, it's around the 9.5 pound typically. Single action trigger pull, 3 pounds, 11.8 ounces. 3 pounds, 12.6 ounces. Weight on the CZ 75 SP01, 2 pounds, 7.8 ounces. Weight on the CZ 75, 2 pounds, 3.6 ounces. So it's not really that much difference, just under 4 ounces. I want to thank Fiocchi for sponsoring the ammo, all made in the USA, one of the largest manufacturers of ammo in the country. And also we have our Lula loaders, which make loading these magazines a lot quicker. These are 18 rounders, so it takes a little longer. Now when it comes to the range, this is an all steel frame pistol, so it's going to mitigate a lot of the recoil. Then you include the internal slide rails, where the slide just seems to nestle down in the frame, gives it a very low bore axis, and so it's really smooth to shoot. The rails are all the way from the front of the frame all the way back, and so you have a lot of surface, and so it just really is a natural smooth shooting firearm. It's one of the reasons why this has been so popular for so long. But being able to really get those shots quickly, you're able to do so, and it tracks very well. It just comes right back down to the sight. And again, that's the reason why it's been so popular with competitive shooters. But also military and police have gained a lot of benefit from that smooth shooting firearm. Yeah, it's definitely not one of your striker fire polymer frame Wonder 9s, but it has a lot of heft to it, and it has a lot of soul. And again, that's one of the reasons why the CZ 75 is still one of the most popular selling firearms in the world. To disassemble the SP01, drop your magazine, check the chamber. First thing you want to do is to bring back your slide, and you want to line up the notch in the frame with that notch on the slide, just like this. Bring around your pistol, and right here is your slide release. And so we're going to take a magazine, just pop it open, and then we're just going to pull it right out. Go ahead and pull the slide right off. And you can see these slide rails go all the way down the length of the slide and the length of the frame. And that's one of the secrets of the CZ design, and one of the reasons why it's so popular and it shoots so flat and smooth. Go ahead and take out our recoil spring and guide rod. It is a polymer guide rod, and then we have that flat recoil spring. Hammer forged barrel. And again, the slide. Everything is very well done. I mean, they just make an excellent firearm. And we have really shot this one quite a bit. I mean, it really is dirty, but it just keeps on running. Now, one of the things that can happen with the CZ 75 altogether is that sometimes the slide stop can break. One of the big things about that is just to keep it lubricated. Really about 15 to 20,000 rounds, it's good to switch this out. Also, the hammer springs, sometimes they can wear out, and a lot of that has to do with the double action pull, just pulling that double action. This is mainly shot in single action, so really it's mainly people that are dry firing a lot, and so it really should hold up. But one thing about the CZ is it can get a little complicated down in here. I have put some different safeties in these, and you know, it can be a little trick, but it can be done even with your amateur gunsmith like I am. And then of course, obviously with the slide stop, having an extra one would not hurt, and if I was a competitive shooter, I would definitely have an extra. And these are very simple to install and take out. That's all you need to do to field strip. Just return it, get it back in. Of course, it's just like a regular pistol that way. It's just a little different with the slide stop. And of course, with the rails being full, and then again, we want to line up these two lines on the slide and the frame. Pop it into place, test for function, and we're good to go. It's not really that difficult, much less than a 1911. Now the MSRP is $829, and of course this does come with night sights. Of course market price will be less. This is really a fairly heavy firearm, and that's probably one of the biggest cons. It's really made for a duty pistol. It's made for, you know, maybe law enforcement or definitely competitive shooters. Again, when this is fully loaded, it does get up to around 3 pounds. But just for your regular shooters, it's a great gun to take out to the range. It's a lot of fun. It would make an excellent home defense firearm. This is not necessarily something you're going to be carrying as a concealed carry option, but there are people I'm sure that do. And the CZ75 has been carried quite a bit. In fact, I have one of the Rammies, which is the really small subcompact, and it's a joy to carry. Another thing is with the internal slide rails, that also helps with recoil management. But again, you got those really short slide rails that make it a little more difficult to grab. But honestly, it's not really that big of a deal. You can just grab them, pull it, and it's so smooth, it just works really well. It is ambidextrous on the decocker, and the slide release is not ambidextrous. So there are some limitations for left-handed shooters, but honestly, a lot of guys overcome that because they've been shooting guns that were designed for right-handed shooters anyway. If you want something lighter, of course, there is the Phantom, which is the polymer frame option. Actually, they make a number of different higher-end custom guns that are in the SP01 family. So the sky's the limit when it comes to the SP01. But as far as just a solid firearm, it's going to be hard to beat the SP01. Then again, if you want something a little lighter, a little slicker, the regular standard CZ75 is iconic. And this just comes in with a lot of great features. If you're taking a gun out to the range, or if you want something as a go-to firearm, the CZ75 series is excellent, but the SP01 just takes it up a notch with a lot of the features. And you get that tactical rail at the front. You know, there's so many different sights, there's so many different holster options, grip options, and there are a lot of upgrades that you can make onto your CZ75 or SP01. Then they have also their compact versions as well. So there's a lot of pluses, and then you have CZ quality, which is just world renowned. And for the past almost 45 years, this has been a favorite with a lot of people. So really, it's heavy, but that is also a plus. And honestly, that's the only con that I can give you. Now I want to thank CZ for sending the SP01 for the initial review. And again, I purchased it. It was a T&E gun, and I just love the CZ75 series. And guys, if you ever get one in your hand, you'll understand why I'm such a big fan of the CZ75, and especially the SP01. You just have to decide if you got the moxie. Rubber Dummies is one of the best training tools on the market, and you get a 10% discount using Suit00 when you click the link down in the description. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. CZ75 SP01 Tactical. Good gosh. Came from the CZ75. And I decided to do an update because when we have the standard 16 rounds, this 16, and there's no slide release on the decock, on the okay. Man, those cicadas drive you crazy.